James the Idol Smasher at yahoo.com. Good morning, and thank you for tuning in. Haven't made a lot of videos lately, as you might well know, but thought I might bring this one up because I've been, kind of tuning in a little bit to the debate I'm not really in anymore, which is the evolution versus creation, theist versus atheist. It's always science versus religion. There you go. There's the holy trinity of a good deal of the Google conversation. Okay, I jest, not really. And see, I've been listening to this since I took part in my 20s. When I first really realized how you could network on the internet, years ago. I've been watching this argument, this debate go on, and I'm beginning to see a recursion in the argument. Now, just recently in the Parsha readings, we studied Genesis, and we even still have. It's a Genesis discussion. We're just going chapter by chapter, which is pretty lame. We're going to get deeper and bigger into it, God willing. But something came to me, and I recently got a few books recently. Thanks again, Path, for that. Path of Abraham. There are a lot of things in Genesis 1 that I think are misunderstood on both sides. I've always said this, I've always alluded to it, and I found something in Torah that kind of just leaps at you. I'll discuss that, but I want to start off with science, okay, because that's pretty damn important as well. And that's what this afterthought, or this kind of meh moment that Darwin had, that what the creationists might call evotards, like the extremists who don't even understand the science, the ones who kind of embarrass science folk, sciencey people, just kind of like, okay, let's talk about this for a few days. You might need some educating first. But they ran with this notion that Darwin, it was a response Darwin had to hearing about Pasteur, that that life cannot arise from non-living matter. It's been tried. They've tried it and tried it. It's been over 100 years. They still haven't been able to change that. They call pseudo-life, proto-life. What the hell does that mean? It's meaningless. We have a little ways to go in this area of science, okay? We know right now, by all the laws of science, life arises from life, and there's no other way to do it, by its kind. We haven't been able to disprove that ever. It used to be considered scientific law until last decade, somewhere along the way, Christians got a hold of science, apparently. I know they're not supposed to do that here on Google+. Christians are supposed to be kind of dumbed down and stupid. They're not. They discovered that there's a law that kind of refutes a lot of the claims made by Darwinian evolutionary theorists, if you will. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's not science, people. This is when you start getting almost when it stops being science and goes to politics. This is what I'm getting at. When it stops being the five steps, the scientific method, which is sacrosanct. When it leans, it goes into politics. This is the area I'm discussing. I'm not preaching science to anybody, but I want to discuss Darwin's response to this news. And he says, meh, it could have been a warm puddle with amino acids and other little, goody ingredients and a little electric current. It could happen. And I think it took up it was in a letter, and I didn't know any other time he said this. I can't find it. I really honestly haven't sat and read a lot of Darwin in a few years. It's been a while. I don't know of any other place he made this statement. It was like 2-3 lines in a letter he wrote to somebody. And the flippin' people, this other bunch, political people, ran with it. They ran with this notion until the 50s when it was proven it just can't happen. And they've tried it since then, and it just can't happen. Darwin's idea was great. So was the covered wagon. All right? Seriously, this isn't an insult to Darwin. Darwin was clever. His contribution to science has absolutely, in my opinion, nothing to do with Darwinian evolutionary theory. I think it's the ability for mankind to look at nature, at biology. I'm going biology here. when I'm saying evolution, Darwinian evolutionary theory. When looking at biology, we've been able to look at nature in ways we never had before. We've looked at it on a closer, more interesting level. That's Darwin's contribution, is the fact that he took the time and looked closely and then stepped back. And he had a great idea. He was able to find what ties life with life, or an idea that helps people along. Some of the stuff hasn't worked. Okay. Not everything Newton said was dandy either, Where would we be without Newton? Really, where would we be? Speaking of scientific law. Okay. And the thing I like about Darwin, and what I've always liked about the Torah, specifically Genesis, but even further down the line, the whole of Torah, is that God was identifying kinds and species. Now, you have to understand that to the Jew in the Bible, to the Israelite, let me get correct, in the Torah, the Israelite is ordered by God. Actually, everybody in creation is, but the Jews even more so for other reasons. But God orders mankind to know nature. You have to know the difference between a hare and a rabbit. When we study in Torah, when we study Noah's flood, it's that there were two of every kind that were salvaged in this catastrophe. Two of every kind. So you had to know the difference between a kind and basically a species. I don't think there was a word species quite like that, but there was clear differentiation all throughout. Let alone what the Jew is allowed to eat, but how we treat the vegetable. How do we identify a vine and a tree? What are the differences? Why can't certain things be grafted, or that is not good for the natural order to interfere, for man to interfere with? That it works backwards on us. You have to identify what's going on in nature in order to be a good Noahide, or for that matter, a good Jew or a good person. You have to know nature. It's important that we know nature. And as clever as Darwin is, Torah was first in this. There's a lot of stuff we don't get as Christians because we're not Hebrews. We don't understand what the Hebrew Bible is talking about near as much as the Hebrew people, considering God chose them to have it. So if you go to them and learn about this stuff, you learn there is a science to everything, and that there are proper procedures in identifying things in nature. Technology, meh. Now here's the kicker, or the first kicker of this whole story. Genesis supports evolutionary theory. Genesis supports evolutionary theory. From what I've gathered, I could be wrong. I am studying Judaism, and, Jews have a wide range of opinions about just about everything, including Torah. So I don't want to say that I'm poskening here. I'm not. This is not the. But from what I gather, there are very few actual creations that are mentioned in Genesis. If I'm not mistaken, it's the heavens and earth, light, and I think man's soul. And the rest of it happens, yes, by direction of God. I'm not denying that in the Torah. But the commentators from 1,000 years ago, but prior 2,000 years ago almost, they were teaching that the ocean had everything it needed for life to arise as it was created. It came together naturally, ready to team with life. You don't hear God uttering in the fish and the fowl, do we? We don't hear God placed the fish and the fowl in the waters, or in the heavens. Okay, we've seen flying fish. It's not. Let the earth bring forth life of its kind. Let every seed-bearing plant. He said let. It was already there. He didn't create it. He ordered things to happen. He ordered the seed to sprout life. And if I'm not mistaken, I think algae is considered seed. Whatever. That's there in Torah. It's pretty self-explanatory. He placed fish and the fowl in the oceans, but the commentators say that the oceans were ready to start life anyway. It didn't, it didn't need to be created. They were placed there. In other words, it was already ready to spring forth life. And life from lifelessness is pretty much Genesis. I know that's also debated. But it does say that. I'm not sure if I believe it. I'm just telling you what it says and what people have said to me, passing this along. Let the earth bring forth life of its kind. And so the earth brought forth, possibly, where would it bring forth from? It would bring from the air and the oceans to bring forth life of every life of its kind. Possibly the earth itself gave birth to the creatures, the creeping things upon the earth, quite possibly. But that doesn't discount the earth drawing forth life from the oceans. It's not explicitly said, but if you already have fish and fowl, where else would earth? I'm just saying. And on the same day that creeping things, mammalians and reptiles, so was man. So, and it wasn't until God breathed life into Adam anyway that things changed. And from God breathing forth life directly and using, it says, formed with his hands. I'm not sure if it says hands, but formed of the earth Adam. In other words, there was physical contact. There was physical unity in that moment. And from that moment on is when we measure the 6,000 years of men. None of that's spoken of in Genesis 1. And you have to look at part of it is not necessarily allegory. There's a lot. There are deeper aspects to it. I'm not going to get into here. And the final thing I want to bring to this notion is, I don't understand why you have to look at intelligence as something separate from nature. That makes absolutely no sense to me. Be it from super concentrated electromagnetic radiation, light, becoming alive and having a consciousness in the universe, which is exactly what's happened. Or, for that matter, DNA. The DNA would be able to evolve into something that could decode itself, that could understand itself. The DNA isn't impressive. It's man's mind to be able to do that. That it all came from single-celled organisms. Why do we have to separate the notion of intelligence? Okay, whether it be humans from the future, or space aliens, or whatever. Or quite possibly a god, possibly a corporation of planet builders like you get in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Okay, let's not go too far here. Let's just try and be open-minded about this. Why should nature be separate from intelligence? Why is it unscientific to look at the evidence and say that intelligence, this is obviously a product of intelligence? Whether it's in biology or cosmology or whatever. Why is that forbidden? Because already we know for a fact intelligence is part of existence. What's the end result so far in evolution? What has it produced? Unlike anything it's ever produced before, humans who illuminate the Earth's crust at night and send satellites and probes and things. Humans. That's what came out of the first bacteria. If evolutionary theory is true. Humans naturally evolved into this. Well, then if intelligence is a product of nature, why can't intelligence be a product of something besides men? If we're creating life in a lab, are we proving abiogenesis or are we proving intelligent design? It's a trick question, but one worth asking. Anyway, I think I've ranted on enough. If you've lasted this long, thanks. Feel free to leave a question, comment, compliment, complaint, suggestion. Don't be a whiner if you're going to complain. Make a good argument. I'm here to learn. James the Idol Smasher at yahoo.com is my email address. Do tune in to Google Plus on Thursday evenings. There is a Noahide-based, Noahide-geared, galloping Noahide-led reading and study of the week's Parsha. It's a Torah study. Feel free to tune in if you're interested in taking part in the discussion and you like what you see. Get a hold of me or Reuven Goldstein. He will take care of you as well, and we'll get you hooked up with the Noahide B'nai Noach folks here on Google Plus. Thanks for tuning in. Shalom, y'all.